The Wes Penre Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The Second Level of Learning. http://wespenre.com. Genesis Paper Number 5, Lord Enki the Cosmic Vampire by Wes Penre, Saturday, August 25, 2012. Revised, Sunday, September 2, 2012, http://wespenre.com. It is difficult to free slaves from the chains they worship. Abraham Lincoln. 1. Abstracts. So far, I have still given you a version of Earth history which is slightly in line with what Zechariah Sitchin told us in his chronicles, but we're getting closer to the truth, and we are going to take the rest of the story even closer to truth than that. It's time we take it all the way. Many or the readers have read Level I already. http://wespenre.com/site-map.htm right bracket comma and the previous papers in Level 2 http://wespenre.com/site-map2.htm right bracket comma. So we have successively been building up to this moment. Now we know what Enki did, and the chronological order of things. But do we really know his true intention behind what he was doing when he was creating vessels in which he could put the fire of the goddess? Did he have approval to do so, or did he use knowledge he'd gained while trained under his mother, the queen? It's now time to take our story to a whole new level, and hence we need to ponder the following. Although Lord Enki had now worked together with his stepbrother Enlil and the overlords of Sirius, for a very long time here on Earth, he was still an Aryan somewhere deep down in his heart, quite hidden, but still there. He still knew who his mother was, and he understood who the creator of the universe was. He had taught his own creation, humankind, the religion of the mother goddess and the divine feminine away from the Syrian overlords. Was there somewhere in his mind a desire, or maybe some hope that mankind one day would reach the stars while being fully aware of what it meant to be of the fire of the mother goddess, having a divine spirit? Or did he have some other goals in mind for mankind? As it were, Lord Enki decided to abandon those who wouldn't follow him, and leave them to their destiny in the hands of a cold and emotionless oppressor and usurper. Thus, he left his early creation to their destiny. We must ask ourselves, if he was such a compassionate being as he is told to be here on Earth, why would he do that? 2. Old souls trapped with younger souls. In addition, sometime after the departure of the Namlu, Enki found about 500,000 Namlu souls roaming around here on Earth or in the Earth near space for different reasons. These souls were trapped with Syrian technology and recycled into the system. They are still here today, reincarnating in human bodies, often being wise souls, sometimes teachers, philosophers, or artists, but equally trapped. These souls in turn were fragmented and spread out over time like all the rest of the human soul group, but never had the chance to report back to their oversoul once their bodies died, and they were constantly recycled on Earth, lifetime after lifetime with full, or in some instances, almost full, amnesia. The rest of humanity have oversouls as well, but these oversouls have no real memories of life in the stars, because the oversouls never got to experience the stars. They were created, and are still created, as a product of memories and experiences of an individual's experiences from lifetime to lifetime, and are growing in wisdom with time. Experiences gathered in a cloud which becomes each person's oversoul to which they are supposed to report back after each lifetime and let the soul fragment merge with, but just like the Namlu, they never get the chance to do so. Instead they are seduced into going into the tunnel of light after death and be recycled into the Syrian system in order to be vampired on even more. Is the reader starting to see the dilemma? Each person's oversoul is kept away from the Earth vicinity, outside the grid, so when we die, we instinctively move towards the oversoul, but are distracted on the way. Our guides say, "Come this way. Go into the light with me and everything will be all right. You will meet your relatives, friends, and you can rest." How many do you think fall for this when they come out of the body from a lifetime, having full amnesia, except from the most previous life, not knowing where to go? I would estimate about 99.5%, there are always a few who slip between the cracks and escape. So the difference between young souls, all humanity except about 1 million soul fragments, and the older souls, about 500,000 souls plus X amount of their soul fragments spread out across linear Earth time, is that the younger souls didn't have an oversoul when Enki created them, whether it was the early humans, working in the mines and on the plantations, or Project Elohim and Project Erectus, doesn't matter, they all fall under this umbrella. All these souls built their oversoul as they went along, and memories only include Earth memories, because they haven't been anywhere else. The majority of today's Homo sapiens fall under this category. The other category, still with us today, is that of the older souls, who were trapped here by Syrian technology and have oversouls with memories from have traveled the stars in the past. Old and young souls have lived together on this planet since the first human was created by Enki and Ninhursag/Mamatunamu. 3. The creation of Elitism on Terra Nova. Instead of saving the earlier human experiment, who were still slaves owned by Enlil, Enki abandoned them and took the more intelligent individuals of the new species, who had the fire of the goddess, and educated them in the mother goddess religion. However, instead of teaching them that we all are equally important and that we all contribute to the overall society and the world we live in, Enki introduced another Syrian-like hierarchy amongst his creation, where those who were most intelligent ruled the masses as they saw fit. And for those who are advanced researchers into the global elite, and also know how energy works, I ask you the following: what happens when an elite rule the masses? The rulers eventually become addicted to power rushes and to boost their own importance. And from where do they get their power rushes? That's right, by sucking in the energies from the people. They become man-eaters, energy vampires. Didn't Enki understand this? And if he did, why did he still do it? Although this was eons ago, what Enki decided to do right there and then has had implications up to this very day and is a big part of the whole big problematic situation we are trapped in. We can't read his mind and know what he was really thinking, but do we really have to? What we do know and can see are the consequences of what he did. If he really made a mistake which he learned from later, he has showed no signs and willingness to make things right over the millennia. If nothing else, let us humans learn from this, because one day, if we play our cards right, we may want to be creator gods ourselves. When that day comes, we need to keep in mind that with such a huge task at hand, it comes with an enormous amount of responsibility. Every step we take when creating a species needs to be tested across the dimensions to see which probable outcomes a certain decision may have, and build that decision on the possible consequences it would have in the future for the same species. To build something in the moment without first testing it for flaws is irresponsible and may lead to a lot of unnecessary pain and suffering for the species that is created to evolve on the specific planet the Creator God chooses to work upon. In the beginning of the history of Terra, the original founders, the Ancient Ones, knew how to work across the dimensions when they created the first living library. They were responsible, and the consequences of their actions became a golden age on Terra. There are other creator gods with great potentials, who would be called master geneticists in their society, but still lack the responsibility which comes with their great talents. It is unfortunate for us, I think, that Lord Enki continued his experiment here on Earth where one of the most aggressive species in this sector of the galaxy were operating. One could argue that the energies that this creates may have contributed to Enki's decisions, as it is very difficult to think straight in an oppressive environment, but on the other hand, he chose to work under the Syrian king instead of working for his mother, the queen, so he made that decision already early on, long before he came to Terra Nova. And mind you, he took a Syrian consort, Ninhursag, whom helped him create the version of us that after many twists and turns became Homo sapiens. So we really have to think hard about this: where was Enki's loyalty, with the king of Sirius or the queen of Orion? I am not trying to put all the blame on Lord Enki, but the situation we are in today started out as a co-creation between Enki, his brother Enlil, and the king of Sirius. Although he did teach us a lot about spirituality, or rather, he taught a selected elite, and how to survive in a hostile environment, he still didn't think highly of his own creation. He looked at us as slightly enhanced animals, where a few were a little more intelligent than others. And his idea of how his creation would survive through the wheels of time was based on elitism, where a few are controlling the many. In later papers we will discuss in details the exact consequences of the actions Enki took before Lemuria and Atlantis. His elite structure built the backbone to our current society, and with that backbone in place, the few are still today able to control the many. But it is not all doom and gloom. On the flip side, we should also be grateful for some things he did. He actually gave each of the new humans a burning torch of the fire of the goddess, which made us tightly connected with the divine. The oppression, however, under which we were raised as fire in a human body, with ourselves being disconnected from the rest of the universe, including our own oversouls, has made it very hard for us to reach our full potentials. So we're sitting in a moral dilemma. We inhabit the fire, but we don't know how to use it responsibly. And I am suggesting that if we don't wake up and let this divine flame start burning again and be used for the good of humanity and the universe in general, yes, we have that power, someone else is going to use it until they have totally depleted us of energy. Have you ever felt fatigue without really understanding where the exhaustion comes from, perhaps from one moment to another? In the beginning, let's pretend Lord Enki managed to keep it secret that he had ignited our bodies with the fire of the goddess. Lord Enlil and King Anu didn't know. If so, it's very hard to imagine that Enki would think he could remain keeping it a secret, withholding the information from his Syrian brothers. Yes, it's hard to imagine, because it never happened this way. Here is where we need to stop and reflect. Many authors have tried to glance over this, knowing it doesn't make sense, but didn't have an answer to why Enlil cast Enki's new creation out of Eden. Most researchers and authors say that when Enlil found out that Enki had given some humans the fruits from the trees of knowledge and life, he got furious and threw his creation out of the garden, and Enki welcomed it, because he could continue his experiment without interference. So now, let's think about it on an even deeper level. Would Enlil first be furious and then let Enki continue the experiment by himself, knowing that in a few hundred years, Lord Enki's new human, inhabiting the fire, would multiply thousandfold and become the dominant species on Earth? This having as a consequence that all power would go to Enki, who was the one in charge of the fire-ignited new humans. We can all agree to that Enlil had a bad temper, but we wouldn't necessarily agree to that he was stupid. And he wasn't. Far from it. Enki may have been even smarter, he was the scientist, he was the genius, but none of them was less than brilliant. No, dear readers, Enki and Enlil worked together already from the beginning and continued doing so. The chain of events I have given the reader in these papers, from when Enki first descended to a destroyed Terra until he created Project Elohim and Erectus, is accurate, except I did not let the reader understand the intentions behind the actions that were taken until now, so you had the chance to look at this whole scenario from different angles, just like I had to do. They first undeveloped humans were created merely to become slave workers in the mines and on the plantations, and they did not inhabit the fire. Hence, Enki didn't care for them, and didn't bother with what his brother did with them. I have a hard time imagining that he was even upset over what he saw his brother do with the slaves. It was all a part of an agreement. The goal was to create a species who inhabited the fire of the mother goddess. That was the real experiment. And Enlil and King Anu were in on it from the beginning. There were no secrets. Instead, in the Garden of Eden, when Lord Enki had managed to create the enhanced human, using the existent Homo neanderthalensis as a base, and transported them to the Garden of Eden, Enlil was thrilled. He and his brother did not fight, they celebrated probably for days, as the gods were known to do. It was then decided that Enlil kept the earlier versions of the experiment in the mines and on the plantations, while Enki could take his new creation out of Eden and spread them out over the world after have taught them esoteric knowledge and the religion of the mother goddess. But only to those who were pure, whose bloodlines were kept clean, the chosen ones, who were the most intelligent and could be interbred to enhance their psychic abilities. They became the ones who were allowed to eat from the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. They were the ones whose lifespans were increased, while the rest did not live nearly as long. They were the ones who were allowed to drink the blood of the goddess, the life force which ran through the veins of their fellow man. This prolonged their lives so they could live sometimes for thousands of years, but they could not eat the best fruits of the tree of life, because neither Enki, nor Enlil, wanted them to become like the gods. The rest of the enhanced humans, whom they let breed as they wished, were not as fortunate. Their lifespan was much shorter. But what then is true in the Bible story? Didn't Satan, Enki, tempt Adam and Eve to eat from the fruits? And didn't this infuriate God, Enlil? Yes, symbolically that happened. The tree of knowledge has a lot to do with sexuality, but it was not the fact that the humans had eaten from that fruit, gone from asexual to sexual, which infuriated Enlil. It was the fact that the chosen ones started breeding with the lesser humans, as the gods saw them, although they knew that this was forbidden, because it would dilute the divine blood which ran through the veins of the new humans. This was the reason why the chosen ones were thrown out from Eden, to separate the species from each other, and to breed an elite. So Satan took his people out of Eden and continued to educate them, some more than others, and started the secret societies, all with Enlil's consent. The religion of the Mother Goddess was very important in this process, as we shall see. The incredible power that was dormant to a large degree within the humans was still a threat, and the fire needed to be kept under control. The real power was in the females. They became the initial shamans. They were the ones who most easily could connect with the 96%, the realm of the goddess the void. By abusing women, by raping them, torturing them, drinking their blood, and eating their flesh in grotesque dark rituals, they would be able to connect to the inner realms of the Khaa. And so, the war of the genders, which had been played out for an eternity in this part of the universe, was now brought down to Terra Nova as above, so below. However, the abuse did probably not start right away. The experiment was a long-term plan. The gods think long thoughts, as I have said before, and structures needed to be established for the experiment to play out over the millennia, but it was all well planned, and panned out pretty well for the Dark Lords of Sirius and their master geneticists. There were only a few bumps in the road, as we will discuss eventually, but other than that, the gods have gotten what they want so far, all the way up to today's date. 4. The Kings of the Void. But what is it they really want? If their intentions were evil, why then create humans with all this power? The answer is simple. The gods themselves didn't, and still don't, have this power themselves, so they had to create it outside themselves. Thus, they created us to feed off. By giving us the fire of the goddess, the same fire the Namlu had been given by the Queen of the Stars, they can use our fire to connect to the 96% and feed off from the Khaa energy to deplete the universe of the goddess. There are many ways to do this once they have the access, via us and others, which I will come to. One way is to feed off the female sexual energy, especially when the woman orgasms. Another way is to induce fear and terror in the victim. When a person is fearful, he or she gives up their energy and the vampire can suck it in and use it. If they create a mass event like 9/11 or any war, these are events where many people are in uncontrolled fear and terror at the same time, which will really help connecting the gods to the goddess universe. Then we have sports arenas. The old Romans had their arenas, where gladiators fought for the same purpose, where the gods can feed off the energies from people who ecstatically watch the event and participate emotionally, but also from the players. Same thing happens at rock concerts with their big arenas. This is the whole purpose with rock concerts. Moreover, they can either kidnap or breed women who have a great amount of fire, and feed off them by torturing them and rape them and eventually kill them, drink their blood, and eat their flesh. There are tons of babies who are born outside of society, who are never registered, and used in dark blood rituals. This may be hard to stomach, but is nonetheless true. There are countless witnesses to this who have come out in the open. These gods, and their appointed global elite, rape young girls, still being virgins and preferably pre-puberty, and induce as much fear they can in their victim. When the girl is at the peak of trauma, fear, and terror, sometimes they use little boys, too. They kill her, and immediately, while the adrenaline is still pumping, they drink the blood and sometimes eat her flesh not only to get a power rush, but to be able to connect to the 96%. If they manage to give the little girl an orgasm as well before she dies, the better. Now you know why the global elite dedicate themselves to such dark rituals. We still need to discuss their ultimate purpose. However, before we get into that, we need to understand that Terra Nova, Earth, is not their only experiment. They have done this before, and most certainly after they did it here on Earth. They quarantine the planet, entrap the souls and feed off them to gain power to connect with the 96%. They shut down the stargates, lock the species into a small frequency band, which is not being used by other star beings, in order to better hide their project. Then they create a grid around the planet which is intending to keep visitors out and prisoners like us, in. Is it true that the Syrians were once vassals and advanced guards of the Orion Queen? Yes, that whole story is true from beginning to end. The wars took place, a peace treaty was made, and the Syrians became the advanced guards of the Queen, the feared Dakh, pronounced Doch, think dog, warriors. Some Syrians are still serving the Queen and are not part of this drama, but many of them rebelled after the treaty was made, thinking that now they had advanced to a point where they had become the heirs of the universe, the kings of the Khaa. However, they knew that the Mother Goddess would not give up her position to them voluntarily, so others means had to be taken. Lord Enki is the son of Queen Nekht, the Orion Queen. He was trained to become one of the best geneticists in the Orion Empire, and the Queen had hoped he would help him create new worlds and seed them, and thus expand her empire, but at some point after he was trained, he decided to side with the rebels under their Khanas Connor, whom many researchers and alternative historians call Anu. Enki was born from an unfertilized egg, hence he was considered a male in Orion and could not inherit the throne, which can only be inherited by a female. In Orion, as we know, the female line is what is most important, while in Sirius it's the male. This, apparently, was not something Lord Enki accepted. He wanted the power that his mother had, he wished to be the king of the universe. Lord Enki knew that he couldn't do much about his situation as long as he stayed in Orion, so he sided with the rebels and even married a Syrian female. The battle we hear about between Enlil and Enki in the old scriptures and from interpreters thereof, is simply a power struggle between the two step-brothers, as of whom should inherit the throne. Not the throne of Sirius as much as the throne of the universe. Who is going to get the title, King of the Khaa when the Mother Goddess is destroyed? And what about Anu? Well, there is a reason he keeps his two sons away from Sirius and let them play out their drama on Earth or elsewhere, as long as they are far away from him and therefore can't overthrow him easily. King Anu needs them to fulfill the goal of the Syrian overlords, but Anu doesn't have any plans to let go of his own power. This power struggle continues up to this day, but has for hundreds of years now been played out elsewhere, probably in another, by Syrians occupied star system. However, the gods are coming back. A.am.e, by some called Woodworm, is returning, and with her, many of the gods from the Parthenon. I was listening to a Pleiadian CD a month ago or so, where someone asked them where the gods were, and where they have roamed since they left. The Pleiadians told the person that some of the gods never left, and those who did just took a nap, but will return. What they mean is that time is irrelevant for them and the time they've been gone is like a blink of an eye for them. But why did they leave at all? From information I have gathered from different places, it looks like they had business to attend elsewhere, and also, they had to let things play out down here. They wanted an industrial revolution, which they got, and a development of technology, enough so that the gods feel comfortable when they return to create a machine world. This time, the enslavement will be much more solid and definite. I can't stress enough that we are standing at the crossroads, a fork in the road, and the decisions we decide to take will stay with us for a very long time, in our terms. Again, for the gods, it's just a blink of an eye. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. At the point where we left off, the enhanced humans, the selected ones had just left Eden, and after had been trained by Enki, the tribes split up and went in different directions, which was exactly what the Aryan master geneticist wanted. Enki had encoded the DNA of the elite, the shamans and their high priests and priestesses, to avoid breeding with the lesser kind by all means, with the intention to keep the elite bloodlines pure and clean. Enki wanted these bloodlines to be the direct descendants of the gods, to be used for his own purposes, and those of the Syrian overlords. The shamans were put in charge of the tribes, and the high priests and the high priestesses sometimes became the police force, and sometimes the teachers, i.e. the diluted teachings of Enki. Thus, lots of different civilizations were started all over the planet, and many of them were following the religion of the Mother Goddess, but not for the right purpose. Still, the elite bloodlines were clueless, they truly thought of themselves as more divine than the rest and had the divine right to rule. They, themselves often didn't know what they were being used for, and this is true even today. The global elite behind the scenes truly think they are doing the right thing. Still, much water has run under the bridges since ancient times, and the ruling elite has been taken over by different forces again and again, but from a higher perspective, seen from the eyes of the gods, it doesn't matter. The energy it has created, and still is creating, can be used the way it was intended. So, it's somewhat irrelevant who is in charge of whom. Still, and this is especially true in the beginning, many civilizations were built, and not all of them were evil. Some of them were actually using the power of the Khaa for the good of the tribe and the universe. There were civilizations which lasted for a very long time, without being distracted by outside forces and thus could develop by themselves. One of these civilizations were Mu, or Lemuria. Researchers have been trying to date this civilization and many have come to the conclusion that Mu existed from 80,000 BC to around 11,500 BC, which is an impressive 60,850 years. Depending on how we look at it, this time range is probably true from one perspective. These civilizations were not limited to the exact geographic location of the lost continent, they extended to other parts of the world as well, such as the west coast of America, both North, Latin and South America, and China and Tibet in the west, so the time frame is a little bit misleading. For thousands and thousands of years, these Lemurian tribes lived quite peaceful lives and evolved spiritually to a level mankind probably hasn't seen since then. This may be something we could call the Second Golden Age. However, like with everything, great changes eventually occurred, which became the beginning of the end for the Lemurian civilizations. The change came, to some degree, in form of giants. Who were these giants who all of a sudden started walking around in quantities all around the earth, and who influenced the Lemurians, both in positive and negative ways? In the long run, their influence led to the decline, and eventually the destruction, of the continent of Mu. In the next paper we will see how the Lemurian civilizations developed and declined without the direct influence of neither Lord Enlil or Lord Enki, whom I from here on will call Lord Ea, a name which by some researchers also is said to mean bringer of knowledge. I wish it meant, bringer of some knowledge, or bringer of distorted knowledge.